Hello everyone, this is Jotto and welcome to the Hearthstone Weekly Show. Now, for this week, I will be going over a post-GvG Tempo Shaman that I have been running. I said I would bring a deck tech, and I am. So, for this particular week, I've been tinkering around with a Shaman deck a lot. Well, I mean, I've tried a lot of decks, but the Shaman build seems to be the one that's working out the best in my opinion. So, this is a Shaman deck that's running a lot of extra early game additions that I got from GvG, a little bit of life gain in the heal bot, and some extra late game. It's more of a tempo deck than control deck because you have aggressive draws, you have defensive draws, and also your playstyle changes from matchup to matchup. But anyway, without further ado, let's get onto the deck. First things first, Earthshock. Best silence probably in the game, works with spell power, kills things immediately, good card. Rockbiter, again, 1 mana, deal 3 damage. Not really much to talk about. It's kind of Shaman's specialty. I caught Lightning Bolt because I'm running Crackle now, and they do pretty much the same thing, but Rockbiter still works with Doomhammer. Zombie Chow. This is a concession to aggro decks. Zombie Chow on turn 1 is very difficult for aggro decks to deal with if you're going first, and if you're going second, you can use it with removal and just partner it up. The drawback, not really much of one against aggro decks, and you close out the game pretty quickly. Crackle. The latest and greatest in Shaman removal. Crackle has been absolutely insanely good. I was actually blown away by this thing. So, 2 mana, deal 3 to 6 damage, overload 1. Now, a worst case scenario is 2 mana, deal 3, which is basically a lightning bolt. It's slightly worse, but it's basically a lightning bolt. However, this often hits 4. In fact, I would usually use it to kill things at 4. And I think, yeah, but if it doesn't hit it, you're screwed. However, that's not really the case because you're playing a Shaman. Now, Shamans have a knack of having a lot of random stuff on the board, which means Crackle can deal 4 to 7 with a Spell Power Totem or with a Searing Totem. And if you have both, then you can just Crackle, and if it rolls high, you don't need to use your other sticky minions, but if it rolls low, you can, and I mean, the downside is that it's a Lightning Bolt, and the upside is that it basically is hard removal. So, Crackle, very, very good. Completely underestimated this card, but it's very, very good. Annoyotron. Annoyotron is the replacement to Haunted Creeper. The reason for this is because it does almost the same thing as Haunted Creeper, however it has Taunt, slightly worse with Flame Tongue, but it has Taunt. Very, very good at blocking big things, small things, pretty much everything. The other thing is it works with Power Mace, and getting Power Mace on Annoyotron is absolutely disgusting. They just can't get rid of it. It's really insane. Started at 1, currently running 2. I could see 1 of, but I think you need 2 Haunted Creeper type cards in your deck, and Annoyotron fits that slot. Flame Tongue Totem is Flame Tongue Totem. It's one of the best Shaman cards. It is incredibly good. It lets you trade your entire board away to kill just giants against Handlock. This does happen where Flame Tongues, you just play a Flame Tongue, trade your 4 totems off, and it kills a giant. And you basically just killed a giant with some totems. That's ridiculous. And at the moment, the metagame seems to be in 2 different locations, which makes Flame Tongue insane. The first one is that it's either fast, and you can get on the board quickly, which Shaman is good against. The second one is very, very, very slow. So these control decks just sitting on the board not really doing much for about 5 turns, and so I've actually got 4 totems on the board by turn 5. So many times today it's hard to count, because just control decks do not pressure you at all. They don't have a lot of early drops. Why? Because instead of using early drops for the pressure against mid-range and control decks, they're just running a bunch of reactive cards. So you can get your totem wall up, and then you can just utilize them. You get spell power totems, and then your flame tongues are just insane at that point. So very, very good, especially at the moment. Whirling Zap-O-Matic. Now this allows you to do absolutely ridiculous aggro things. It's good at trading, it's good late game, it does a lot of damage on its own, and it's just a really solid 2-drop. The other thing it allows you to do is against control decks, you can open with Whirling Zap-O-Matic and actually just deal ridiculous amounts of damage. The most amount of damage I've done was actually to a Handlock, and it was 18. I've done 18 damage with a Whirling Zap-O-Matic, just 3 turns of attacking. Something else I've done is against Zoo. I have run out a Whirling Zap-O-Matic sometimes behind a taunt or just with a Power Mace, and just flat killed them with just the Zap-O-Matic while I clear his board over and over again. So, very good card, very, very powerful, very good in this deck, even though you're not running that many mech synergies besides the Power Mace. Speaking of Power Mace is absolutely insanely good. I would actually say it's one of the best weapons in the entire game, and that is a high honor considering it's competing with Death by True Silver, Doomhammer, Gore Howl. There's some good weapons right now. Power Mace is insane. One, it's 2 lightning bolts in 1 card with no overload. And you can actually, if you're in second, you can coin Power Mace, kill his 2-drop, then kill his 3-drop and play Harvest Golem, and you have a Yeti. That is a Yeti with Death Rattle. It's ridiculous. Other things you can do is buff a Neutron. You can buff Whirling Zap-O-Matic to get a 10-4 with Wind Fury. That does a lot of damage. And it just clears out stuff. It also is a bit of extra burn later on in the game. It doesn't tend to clog with Doomhammer that much, because you can get through your Doomhammer durability quite quickly. And you can also sack your own Power Mace, where you can actually play Power Mace on turn 4, swing, and then on turn 5 you can swing with it, then play Doomhammer, and you get your activation, and you get 2 attacks, because Wind Fury applies afterwards. So it doesn't really clog with Doomhammer that much. Very good weapon, adds to the slew of Shaman removal, and also very good on the aggressive draw. Feral Spirits, arguably better now than it's ever been, I think. It's an aggro stop, it gives you taunts against big things, and there aren't that many swarms going on in mid-range decks. There's no tokens, for example, and it just is very, very good for this current metagame. 6 health and taunt is very useful. Works with Flame Tongue, good against control decks, well, relatively. It's bad against Priest, but the deck is bad against Priest. So it's a really good card, and it does things like forcing your opponent to use mass removal on 1 or 2 cards on the board, which is very, very good. It's basically 3 mana for 4 attack and 6 health with taunt on both of them. Yeah, I know there's overload, but the overload is not quite mana. It's kind of 4 mana, really, because you can split them along and use overload and curve with overload, because overload cards cost less. So if you play this on turn 3, then on turn 4, sure, you only have 2 mana, but Crackle only costs 2, not 3, because it has an overload, so that you can use that. So they curve with each other quite well. Hex, one of the reasons to play Shaman. Hex is insane. It kills absolutely anything with no drawback, apart from the fact they get a tiny frog with taunt, which is not really that relevant, I must admit. And the fact that it kills anything without turning on the Death Rattle is insane. You can kill Sylvanas easily, you can kill Ysera's, Ragnaros, pretty much anything you can think of Hex deals with. For 3 mana! The card is insane. It is one of the reasons to play Shaman. There's a couple to play Shaman, but Hex is one of the ones that puts it over the top along with Fire Elemental, which we'll get to a little bit later. Absolutely insane card. Lightning Storm, your go-to AoE. The RNG is kind of annoying, however you have Spell Power Totem, and also most AoEs only deal 2 damage, Consecrate, Holy Nova, Blizzard, things like that. So being able to deal 3 on an RNG is pretty good, and sometimes you can actually set up situations where you only need to get the 3 damage on a couple things and not everything. So it does work out. Pretty good spell. Harvest Golem. Harvest Golem got a considerably large boost in the mech type. If it didn't have mech, I would be very sad and I'd be running Spider Tank instead, which is worse than Shaman because you don't really have that much healing at all. You just have Healing Totem, and I'd rather have the extra Flame Tongue synergies in the 2 bodies. The debate between Spider Tank and Harvest Golem is an interesting one. I think that in some decks, Harvest Golem is better, in others, it's Spider Tank. Most notably in Priest, because you have so much healing. But Harvest Golem is just sticky. It's not really an aggro stop as much as Spider Tank is, but you already have plenty of those, so you can actually stall for enough turns to get Harvest Golem value. Doomhammer, the 1-0 of Wind Fury weapon, is surprisingly effective. I use this a lot more for removal now than I used to because there's a lot of random aggro decks running around. However, Doomhammer with Rockbiter is 10 damage, or 16 if you have 2, which is a lot of burst. And it lets you get past a lot of those control decks, lets you whittle away at things. Against Warrior, it's quite handy because it whittles away at the armor a little bit. Although Warrior, primary win condition is really fatigue, and I'm not joking, it actually does turn out that way sometimes. So Doomhammer, very good in the mirror match as well. Bit weak to Harrison. Harrison's been popping up a little bit recently. But then I've also got Power Mace, and they sometimes have to deal with that. Although Power Mace is a horrible Harrison Jones target, sometimes you have to do it. So Doomhammer, been pretty good. Speaking of a hidden gem, Antique Healbot. Now, yes, I have a golden one, I opened it. Antique Healbot, the 5-mana 3/3 with a healing touch attached. This thing has been surprisingly good. First of all, the mech actually does come up with Power Mace, a decent amount, but healing 8 is sometimes the final nail in the coffin for aggro decks. They just can't get past it. Something else I've been noticing with Healbot, Pretty good late game. 3-3, pretty relevant when you're playing a Shaman. You have Flame Tongue, you have Rock Biters to get those through. Not to mention, Anti-Keelbot will heal you out of burst combos. Like, Warriors, they have 12 damage burst. This can get you right out of there. And there's also the Force of Nature Savage Roar combo, which is 14, and that will get you right out of there as well. So this actually is very good against aggro decks. Against control, it does have its uses. Not that many mid-range decks running around at the moment, but I imagine it's at its worst there, but we'll have to see. But very, very good card. Wasn't expecting it to be that good, but it is quite handy. Loatheb, one of the best cards ever made. I don't really have to explain this. It's a 5-mana 5/5 that shuts down all their removal and protects your entire board. So, it's good. What do you expect? Loatheb's in practically every deck. Fire Elemental, the other reason to be playing Shaman, or the main notable one. 6-mana 6/5 is usually a massive tempo loss. That's the one weakness behind High Main, is when you play a High Main, you lose a bunch of tempo, and you kind of hope that the rest of the tempo you've gained on the previous turns makes up for it. Fire Elemental actually gains you tempo. Unbelievably. It's why it's such a good 6-drop. You play it for 6 mana, and then you kill his guy. So they lose tempo when you play your 6-drop. That's insane. It's one of the best 6-drops in the entire game. Definitely one of the better class cards in the game, and it's just absolutely insane. I would say that Fire Elemental to Shaman is kind of what Ancient of Lore is to Druid, as in you can play 2 of them, and they're very, very good, and they just gain you card advantage, and Ancient of Lore loses you tempo, but is more powerful, the effect, but Fire Elemental gains you tempo, and in a deck like this, that can be very, very handy. Other thing is that you can actually use this just as a threat sometimes that burns the face. Doesn't come up that much because there aren't really that many just ridiculous I'm going to sit back on a million spells control decks. It's pretty much the proactive ones that are succeeding, like Warrior Control and also Priest and things like that. Priest has resorted a little bit to sitting back on 15,000 answers, which actually does come up with some weird situations where this deck is bad against Priest, but I'll just draw Whirling Zap-O-Matic draws with Flame Tongue Totems and like a Power Mace, and because they're sitting on 15,000 ways of answering random things, they just die to a Whirling Zap-O-Matic. It does happen. It's kind of amusing, but it does happen, because Priest is a bad matchup for this deck, but there's a couple things you can do in terms of tempo that really help you out. But Fire Elemental really does shine against other Shaman decks, shines against Warlock, especially Zoo, very good against Zoo. And against the mech decks, it kills almost everything in that deck, apart from the really big stuff, which you can kill with Hex. So, very, very good card. One of the reasons to play Shaman, absolutely insane. Alright, Neptulon. I crafted this yesterday. This card is ridiculous. I was sitting on 3,200 dust, because I opened a bunch of packs, and I was wondering what's craft, so I ended up crafting Vojin and Neptulon. Neptulon has been absolutely insane. So basically, this is what usually happens when you play Neptulon. You play Neptulon. They then use hard removal on it, or they run a bunch of stuff into it, or they can't kill it and it kills them. That's usually what happens when you play 7-mana 7/7. But sometimes, I've actually had this big game huntered, I'm just like, sure, and I just play a Bluegill Warrior, I got off the Neptulon, kill it, and then play 3 other Murlocs, and they just lose. Like, adding 4 cards to your hand is ridiculous. I don't care if they're Murlocs, and quite frankly, them all being Murlocs is actually insane. I've got 6 damage old Murkeyes from Neptulon. I've got Bluegill Warriors that are hard removal with a War Leader and a, what are they called? The 1-mana 1/1 that gives attack to everything. Oracle, I think? Yeah. I also got 10 cards off Neptulon earlier, which was 3 Coldlight Oracles against a Handlock, who then milled 5 of those cards. So Neptulon has been absolutely ridiculous. He lets you win games that you just have no right to win. Very good in the Shaman mirror match, because they have to deal with a bunch of extra stuff. Very good against other control decks. Actually lets you beat Priest. I have had Neptulon be the only reason I've beaten a Priest several times. Because they deal with the Neptulon, and then you play a bunch of stuff, and then they actually have to use all their situational removal on the Murlocs. So I've seen people invest 4 cards into killing Neptulon and his Murlocs. It's insane how much value this guy has behind him. The Overload is kind of brutal, because you only actually have 5 mana after the turn you play if it's on 7. However, it's not that bad. It's not that bad because you can actually just play Overload cards on the next turn, and then you'll have 1 extra mana, obviously, from the turn up, and a little bit less Overload, maybe 2. and then you actually have between 6 and 7 mana, depending on your previous turn, and then you can spew out the Murlocs. Not to mention, some of the Murlocs are massive tempo gains. So Neptulon, big tempo loss when you play him. However, if you actually can support the tempo loss, like if it's turn 10 with a Lightning Storm, well, that's 5 overload, so be careful with that. You can use Lightning Storm, Feral Spirits, any of your overload spells along with Neptulon to just get that tempo. Paramace has been really good with Neptulon as well, just remove something, play him. So there's a couple things you can do with Neptulon, and the point is when you get him down, if you get him down and you don't get punished for it, which happens more often than you'd think, they have some serious problems. He's the absolute control break. Against aggro decks, I've actually noticed sometimes you can play Fire Elemental on 6, kill something, then they have to kill the Fire Elemental, then you play Neptulon, and they can't deal with it, so they have to go for you instead, and then Neptulon and the Murlocs and maybe a Storm just take over the game. And that's pretty much it. So, Neptulon, way better than I thought he would be. Very, very good. Allows you to not play Mana Tide Totem, which, to be honest, it was always awkward to have a Mana Tide Totem in your deck. But anyway, as far as matchups goes, the best ones are Zoo. It's incredibly easy for this deck, I must admit. You got Zoo. Control Warrior is really bad against Shaman in general, but against this deck, think, oh, you're running some aggro stuff, so it'd be better. Yeah, but you're also running Neptulon, which they can't really deal with. So you can still deal with Control Warrior. You also have Crackle, which hits way harder than Lightning Bolt. Handlock is surprisingly not as good as normal for Shaman. It's about 65% in the Shaman's favor, which is less than normal. It's normally about 75, but it's still a favorable matchup. Mech Mage is a good matchup for Shaman. Very, very good. You can deal with most things. Aggro decks in general are quite good for this particular deck, apart from Hunter. Hunter's been pretty bad, and I'm not really sure why. I think it's difficult to tell. It's something where it's like, if I don't draw anti-Keelbot, I get burnt out. But then if I don't draw the Hexes, I get high-mained to death. So, it's a little sketchy. But anyway, so that's pretty much it as far as the matchups goes. Obviously, the worst one is Priest. By far. I would say it's about 30% win rate. It's really, really bad. Hunter is not that good. The ones I haven't tested, though, are Rogue and Paladin. I think one other. Rogue I just haven't encountered, and Paladin I just haven't seen. I know there's a couple popular Paladin decks running around, I just haven't run into them. So I don't really know the Paladin matchup. I don't really know the Rogue matchup. I think I played against 1 or 2 Rogues. But my only experience playing against Rogue was dying from 22 because he had literally the perfect burn hand. So it's not really a good judgment on that particular one. But I played against most, and it's been fairly good against most of the classes. I've been winning about 60 to 70% of my games with this deck. But anyway, thank you all for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe. If you have any feedback, put it in the comment section below. But as for now, this has been Jotto, signing off.